July 2015. The highest security prison in Mexico. The legendary drug lord Joaquín Guzmán. He got out of bed and put on his shoes as usual. He went to the bathroom and squatted down. Joaquín never appeared on the surveillance footage again. Everything was like an impossible magic trick. He completely evaporated from the prison. This is Makar Studios. Today, let's talk about the most expensive prison break in history. In a dark and damp tunnel, several men were working with rudimentary shovels. Above them was the Mexican police headquarters. These men could hear police cars passing by every day underground. Their work, however, could not be discovered by the police, although the tunnel was nearly 10 meters from the surface. They were still very cautious. These men knew they could not take any risks. Because now, they are getting infinitely closer to their goal. The most legendary drug lord in Mexican history. Joaquín Guzmán, El Chapo. He is also known as the shorty drug dealer. For several months now, these people have only been equipped with picks and shovels. They had to use these most primitive tools to dig through the hard underground rock. Although modern excavation equipment is more efficient, they cannot use it, because the noise it generates might attract the attention of police above. To implement this insane escape plan, Joaquín Guzmán's men, shortly after his capture, bought a small plot of land just 1 kilometer away from the prison. They began to build houses on this land. The purpose of doing this was merely to cover up their true objective. The inside of the houses was empty. There were no renovations done and there was no furniture. The only thing in the house was the large tunnel opening in the center. Digging this 1 kilometer tunnel was no easy task. It was not an easy thing to do. Moreover, Joaquín's men had to race against time. Because these men did not know when they would be relocated. They had no idea when their boss would be moved. Thus, the time for true Mexican speed had arrived. Joaquín Guzmán's men began to work in 2 lines. One line was mainly responsible for digging the tunnel, transporting the soil, and dumping it. The other line was responsible for the tunnel's electrical and ventilation systems. They even established highly standardized guidelines for the construction. For example, no work could be done after 10 p.m. to avoid excessive noise, or the soil could not be dumped in one concentrated spot, to avoid drawing too much attention and arousing suspicion from others nearby. To improve overall efficiency, these creative geniuses, they even laid a small railway in the tunnel. This not only sped up the movement of the debris, but also allowed their boss to enjoy subway service while escaping. Finally, after 16 months, in July 2015, and having spent nearly $50 million, the 5-kilometer-long tunnel was completed. On the night of July 12, 2015, Joaquín was resting in bed. Suddenly, he heard a metallic scraping sound coming from the bathroom. When Joaquín went to check the situation, his man smiled and said to him, "Boss, we're going home." Generally speaking, the height of a tunnel should be at least adult height. But considering that Joaquín was often mocked for being short, the tunnel was designed to be less than 1.7 meters high. Therefore, only Joaquín could walk upright in the tunnel, while those slightly taller had to stoop. It is no exaggeration to say, this is an authentic Joaquín VIP tunnel. His men even installed a small motorcycle on the tracks. Joaquín rode this motorcycle without having to walk himself. It took less than 2 minutes. Joaquín traversed the tunnel. The whole process felt more like a parade than a prison break. When Joaquín arrived at the small house, he immediately changed into clothes that had been prepared and was then taken away by his accomplices. By this time, the Mexican police hadn't even realized what had happened. However, Joaquín's good days didn't last long. Just a few months later, he was arrested again. This time, Joaquín wasn't so lucky. He was ultimately extradited to the US, and what awaited him would be endless imprisonment.
No.